Captain Alex Carter couldn't help but feel like he was about to step into the unknown. The Kalath, a species as ancient as they were powerful, had invited his ship, Aetheris, for a diplomatic mission in the farthest reaches of space. It was his first time aboard their colossal vessel. Everything about this moment was new, strange, and exhilarating. But what really had his heart racing wasn't just the mission. It was her. Talira, the Kalath ambassador, had been the one to greet him. A tall figure who radiated both elegance and strength, she had stepped into the room like a goddess descending from the heavens. Her skin shimmered with a soft, glowing iridescence, changing with every move she made like starlight on water. Her eyes, oh, those eyes, were a deep violet that seemed to look straight through him, as if she could see every thought in his mind. Alex had heard stories of the Kalath people. They were known for their towering intellect and unmatched physical beauty, but what intrigued him most was their reputation for being intimidating, cold, detached. Yet there she was, standing in front of him, and for the first time in his life, Alex found himself struggling to breathe. His thoughts scattered, and his mind went into a fog as he tried to focus on his mission, on the conversation at hand. But somehow, he couldn't stop his eyes from drifting to her, specifically her. Talira turned to walk towards the meeting table, and there it was, that curve, that undeniable confidence in the way she moved. Alex felt a jolt in his chest. His eyes followed her every step without meaning to. Then, without a word, she glanced over her shoulder, catching him in the act. The smile that spread across her face was knowing, amused, as though she had been expecting this very thing. "Enjoying the view, Captain." Her voice was soft but held a teasing edge, and for a moment Alex swore his heart stopped. The words came out so smoothly, like she'd rehearsed them just for him. He froze, red creeping up his neck. I didn't mean to. I mean, I was just admiring your skills," he stammered, mentally slapping himself. "Smooth, Carter, real smooth." Talira didn't seem bothered. If anything, she found it all rather entertaining. "Admiring my skills, how flattering, but I must admit, I think you're a little distracted by other aspects of my form." His face turned a shade of red that Alex didn't even know was possible. "I didn't mean, I was." "Well, yeah," he mumbled, knowing there was no way out of this. He had to own it now. "Okay, you've got me. I wasn't just admiring your skills, but you are incredible. It's just, everything about you is amazing." Talira gave a soft laugh, a sound that made Alex's chest tighten in a way he hadn't expected. It wasn't like any laugh he'd ever heard before, rich, melodic, and full of a quiet confidence. "I'll let you off the hook, Captain, for now, but next time try to be a little less obvious about it." She winked, and just like that, all the tension that had gripped him melted away, replaced by an uneasy but thrilling feeling. She had noticed him, not just his eyes, but the fact that he was trying and failing to hide how much he was drawn to her. It was strange and exciting, and he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she held herself, the way she spoke, the way she made him feel like he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't yet understand. They continued with the briefing, but it wasn't the mission that had his attention anymore. It was her. Every glance she threw his way, every word she said, seemed to make his heart race faster. As they discussed the terms of the alliance, Alex found himself getting lost in the rhythm of her voice. It was hypnotic, like a soft melody that echoed in the back of his mind. He had to pull himself together, but every time he tried to focus, his thoughts wandered back to her. He caught himself stealing glances at her again, but this time he didn't try to hide it. Her eyes caught his again, this time with a more mischievous glint. "You have quite the talent for admiration, Captain." Her lips curled into a sly grin. Alex opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. What could he say? That she was unlike anyone he had ever met, that his heart seemed to beat faster every time she looked at him, that his brain couldn't function around her. Instead, he gave up on saying anything clever. "I'm sorry," he said honestly. It's not every day I get to meet someone like you." Talira's gaze softened for a moment, and Alex swore he saw a flicker of something unexpected in her violet eyes, something warm. "Well, Captain Carter, it's not every day I get to meet someone like you either." The words hung in the air between them, and for a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Something unspoken passed between them. Alex wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like the beginning of something. The beginning of a connection that neither of them had anticipated. After a few moments of silence, Talira stood up, breaking the spell. "I suppose we have much to discuss, don't we? But for now, I think we can call this a truce." "A truce?" Alex asked, eyebrow raised, intrigued. "Between us," she clarified. "You know I'm not as cold and detached as my people think I am. Perhaps we could explore that more. After all, you're human, and humans are fascinating." Alex found himself smiling, the tension easing. "I think I could get used to this. Exploring, I mean." She gave him a knowing look before turning to walk toward the door, her movement so fluid it was almost hypnotic. "You might find it's more of an adventure than you're ready for, Captain." With that, she was gone, and Alex was left standing there, half-dazed, wondering just how deep this adventure would go. What had just happened? What was this strange feeling? And most of all, why couldn't he get her out of his mind? As he left the room, his mind raced. He'd come here for a diplomatic mission, but it seemed the real mission had just begun. And it wasn't about politics. It was about her, the mysterious, beautiful, and tantalizing Talira. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would push both of them to their limits, challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves, and maybe, just maybe, lead to something neither of them had ever imagined. And all because he'd gotten caught looking at her ass. The next few days aboard the Kalath ship felt like a whirlwind. Captain Alex Carter had been in space for years, but nothing had ever felt as intense, as charged as this. His mind constantly drifted back to the moment he had met Talira. Her smile, her voice, the way she moved, all of it was seared into his memory. He found himself looking forward to their brief encounters, the exchanges that felt charged with unspoken words. It wasn't just her physical presence that captivated him, though. It was the way she saw the world, the way she held herself. She was strong, yes. She was powerful. But there was also a vulnerability to her, one that few people had the courage to show. And Alex, being the curious human he was, couldn't help but want to understand her better. He found himself sitting across from her during their brief breaks, sipping coffee in the vast mess hall of the Kalath ship. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the low murmur of alien voices in the background. Yet, in this vast room, it felt like they were the only two people in the universe. Talira was eating her meal with grace, her long fingers delicately picking at the food. She didn't need to look at the dish to know exactly where everything was. Alex, on the other hand, had to concentrate just to keep his food from floating away. He couldn't help but chuckle at himself, earning a raised eyebrow from Talira. "You humans are fascinating," she said, her voice smooth and warm as always. "Your bodies are not made for zero gravity. It's amusing to watch you struggle." Alex laughed, feeling the tension of the day lift off his shoulders. "It's not that bad. I've got it under control," he said, but his food floating away just proved how much he didn't. "Not quite," Talira teased, her lips curling up in that knowing smile that always made his heart skip a beat. "You're too charming to be this bad at zero-gravity food consumption." "Hey," Alex protested, "I can handle space, but this is a whole new level of challenge. Besides, it's not like you're eating with perfect grace, are you?" He gestured toward her untouched drink, which had slowly begun to float away. Talira followed his gaze, then returned to meet his eyes, an amused glint in her own. "Touché, Captain." She grabbed her drink with a practiced ease before placing it back on the table. Her fingers brushed against his, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. Was it just him, or was there something in the way she held his gaze this time? It wasn't like before. This felt different. He tried to swallow the lump in his throat, but words failed him. They sat in silence for a moment, neither of them willing to break it. "So Talira," Alex began after a long pause, trying to regain his composure. "I've been thinking. You said your people are well, cold, detached, but I don't see that in you." She looked at him for a moment as if weighing her words. "You misunderstand, Captain. My people are not incapable of emotions. We simply don't show them. They're considered unnecessary. Our strength comes from control." Alex leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "I get that, but you're not just about control, right? I mean, I can see it. There's more to you than that. I don't think you're as cold as you want people to think you are." Talira's eyes softened, her usual sharpness fading. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked down at her plate, as though searching for the right way to say something that had been buried deep inside her for a long time. "My people, they expect perfection," she said slowly. "From birth we are raised to never show weakness, never show fear. The Kalath are born leaders, warriors, and diplomats. We are trained to be everything but human." She paused, her fingers tightening around her cup. "I'm not like the others. I don't always want to control everything. Sometimes I want to feel things, but I can't. It's a burden." Alex didn't know what to say at first. He didn't have the words to make it better. But he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't just let her carry that weight alone. She might be a Kalath ambassador, but she was still just her. And for some reason, he wanted to understand that part of her, the part she kept hidden. "You're not alone, Talira," Alex said, his voice softer than he intended. "You don't have to hide everything behind this perfect facade. I see you, and I want to know you, all of you." Her eyes widened just a fraction, and for a moment Alex wondered if he had said too much. But then something flickered in her gaze, something vulnerable, something real. You want to know me?" she asked, her voice quiet. Alex nodded. "Yeah, I do. I mean, you're amazing, not just because you're this incredible ambassador or diplomat, but because you're you. And maybe I'm a little crazy for saying this, but I feel like we could connect. Like there's more to you than what everyone else sees." She stared at him for a long time, her violet eyes searching his face, almost like she was trying to see past the words, trying to find the truth behind them. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never had anyone say that to me before," she said, her tone almost regretful. "You're the first human who's ever truly seen me, not as a Kalath, not as an ambassador, but as someone who is just trying to live, to feel." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "You deserve that, Talira. You deserve to feel everything, not just the weight of responsibility and duty." There was a long pause, one that stretched on and on, until Talira finally smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up her face. It wasn't the teasing smile or the smug grin he'd seen before. It was different, soft, vulnerable. And in that moment, Alex felt like he had won something. Something he couldn't quite name, but something precious nonetheless. "You're not as bad as I thought, Captain Carter," she said, her voice light. Perhaps we have more in common than I thought." Alex chuckled, feeling the tension lift from his chest. "I guess we'll find out, won't we?" As they sat together, the conversation flowing more easily than it had before, Alex couldn't help but wonder what other surprises lay ahead. He knew this was just the beginning of their mission, of their connection, of something he wasn't quite ready to define yet. But whatever it was, he felt like they were on the verge of discovering something bigger than either of them could have ever expected. The weight of their shared vulnerability made the world around them seem a little smaller, a little more intimate. And in that quiet, drifting moment, Alex realized something he hadn't anticipated. He was falling for her. But what would that mean for the rest of their journey? And more importantly, for the rest of their lives? The days passed quickly aboard the Kalath ship. What had started as a professional diplomatic mission was quickly turning into something far more personal. Captain Alex Carter couldn't deny it anymore. He was drawn to Talira, not just her beauty or her alien charm, but the quiet strength she carried. Her vulnerability, which she rarely showed, had ignited something in him, something deep and undeniable. But every time he thought they were getting closer, reality had a way of pulling them apart. Duty called. The Kaleth and the humans were negotiating an alliance, and the stakes were high. Alex found himself caught between the desire to be with Talira and the pressure to keep the mission on track. And then, just when things seemed to be moving forward, the challenge arrived. It started with a call from the ship's bridge, the kind of call that made every nerve in Alex's body stand at attention. "Captain Carter, we have a situation," came the voice of his communications officer, Lieutenant Harris. "You'd better come up here." Alex exchanged a quick glance with Talira, who had been sitting across from him in the mess hall. Her expression had instantly turned serious, the playful light in her eyes fading into the sharp focus of someone who knew the weight of responsibility all too well. "What's going on?" Alex asked, his heart pounding. "There's an enemy fleet on the horizon," Harris continued. "They've broken through our outer defenses and are preparing to board the ship. We need to act fast." Alex stood, his chair scraping against the floor. His training kicked in as his mind shifted into mission mode. "I'm on my way." Talira was already up, moving with the same grace that Alex had come to expect from her. But now, there was a steely determination in her movements. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. Alex hesitated. "Talira, this is dangerous. It's not like the last time. You're an ambassador, not a soldier." She met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "I can handle myself, Captain, and I'm not staying here while my people are in danger. If you want to keep this alliance alive, you'll need me." He could see the fire in her eyes, the same fierce determination that had impressed him from the start. He knew she wasn't going to back down, and honestly, he didn't want her to. If things went sideways, he wanted her by his side. "All right, let's go." The bridge of the Kalath ship was a blur of flashing lights and hurried voices as officers scrambled to make sense of the situation. The enemy fleet was larger than expected, an aggressive, technologically advanced species that had been causing trouble across several sectors. The Kalath had always prided themselves on their strength, but this enemy was pushing them to the limit. Alex quickly assessed the situation, his eyes scanning the tactical readouts. "We need to hold them off long enough to evacuate the crew," he said, "and we need to do it now." Talira stood beside him, her presence as commanding as ever. She might not be a soldier, but she was more than capable of handling herself in this crisis. As the Kalath crew worked to prepare the ship's defenses, Alex turned to her. "Can you help coordinate the counteroffensive from here?" She nodded, her face set in a mask of focus. "I'll do what I can, but if we want to stand a chance, you'll need to get to the hangar bay and lead the ground defense teams." Alex felt a sharp pang in his chest. He didn't want to leave her behind, but he knew it was the only option. "Be careful, Talira," he said, his voice low. She gave him a fleeting smile, a soft expression that only he seemed to get to see. "I'll be fine, Captain, I promise." With that, they parted ways, each heading to their respective posts. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of their responsibility pressing down on Alex's shoulders. He quickly made his way to the hangar bay, where a team of human and Kalath soldiers was preparing for the worst. The battle that followed was intense. The enemy boarded the ship with terrifying precision, launching a full-scale assault on the Kalath vessel. The corridors were filled with blaster fire, the ship's metal walls shaking as explosions rocked the interior. Alex led the ground defense teams with a level of focus he hadn't known he was capable of. His mind worked on autopilot, his every move designed to keep his team safe. But as the fight dragged on, he found himself thinking about Talira. He hoped she was okay. He trusted her skills, but he also knew how much was at stake. The Kalath had a proud, ancient warrior culture, but they were not immune to losses. And if something happened to her, he couldn't even allow himself to finish that thought. Every time he turned a corner, his thoughts returned to her. He could almost feel her presence, even though she was miles away. She was out there, leading her people, keeping the Kalath together. He knew she wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for something greater. But still, a part of him wished he could be by her side, not just as her captain, but as someone who cared. Hours passed, the battle raged on, and the enemy continued to push forward. Alex's team fought bravely, but the odds were against them. They had managed to secure a few key areas, but the enemy was relentless. Just when things seemed at their darkest, Alex heard it, a familiar voice crackling over the comm. "Captain Carter, come in." Talira's voice rang through his earpiece, calm and commanding. "Talira, are you all right?" he asked, his heart leaping with relief. "We're holding our ground," she replied. "But we need reinforcements in the main command center. If we don't take it back, we'll lose the ship." Alex didn't hesitate. "On my way." He sprinted down the corridor, his heart pounding as he raced toward the command center. When he finally reached the door, he found Talira standing tall, her back straight, her face hard with determination. But as she saw him, a flicker of something softer passed through her eyes, relief perhaps. "Ready to finish this?" she asked, her voice steady. Alex nodded. "With you always." Together they led the final push, the ground troops following their lead. With Alex and Talira working as one, they cut through the enemy forces. Every shot they fired, every move they made was in perfect sync, a blend of human instinct and Kalath precision. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the command center. The remaining enemy forces were quickly dispatched, and the Kalath reclaimed control of the ship. As the dust settled, Alex turned to Talira, his heart still racing from the adrenaline of the fight. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. Talira looked at him, her eyes softening. "We did," she agreed, "but we wouldn't have made it without each other." For a moment there was silence between them, the weight of everything they had just been through hanging in the air. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch forever, Alex reached out and took her hand. "Talira, he stopped, unsure of the words, but somehow she understood. "I know," she whispered, stepping closer to him. And in that quiet, breathless moment, surrounded by the wreckage of battle, Alex realized that this was just the beginning of their alliance, of their journey, of something neither of them could have predicted. Together they had survived. Together they had found something more than just duty. They had found each other, and that, Alex knew, was only the start. The Kalath ship, though damaged, had emerged victorious. The enemy fleet was in retreat, and the crew was beginning to recover from the chaos that had torn through their vessel. The battle was over, but the weight of it still hung in the air, a silent reminder of the stakes they had all faced. Alex Carter couldn't shake the feeling of relief mixed with exhaustion as he walked through the corridors, heading toward the command deck. He had fought with everything he had, both for the ship and for Talira. When the battle had ended, when the dust had settled, all he could think about was how close he had come to losing her. It had shaken him in ways he wasn't ready to admit. Despite the chaos of the fight, there was one thing that had stood out clearly to him. He had never felt more alive, more connected to someone, than he did when Talira was by his side. She was more than just an ambassador, more than just a diplomat. She was fierce, smart, and vulnerable, all wrapped up in a way that both challenged and intrigued him. As he reached the command deck, he was met by Talira, who stood before a large display screen, her hands resting lightly on the controls. She was a sight to behold, tired but resolute, her eyes glowing with the soft hum of the ship's energy. "You made it," she said with a soft smile, turning toward him. "I made it," Alex replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "We made it." She gave him a half-smile, the kind that reached her eyes and softened her usually composed demeanor. "I can't say I expected to see you here, Captain. I was half wondering if you would run off and leave us all behind." "Would I do that?" he asked, stepping closer. "I'm not one to abandon my team, especially not you." There it was again, the soft vulnerability in her voice that made Alex's heart ache. You're a stubborn one, Captain, she said with a teasing look. I can't tell whether I should be grateful or worried. Alex chuckled, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. I think you should be grateful. You wouldn't want me to be anywhere else right now. She raised an eyebrow, her gaze lingering on him longer than usual. And why is that? He took a deep breath, his chest tightening with something that felt like longing. Because, he said slowly, every time I fight, every time I think about what's next, I know I don't want to do it without you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet of the command deck was broken only by the low hum of the ship, the distant sound of Kalath officers working to assess damage and repair systems. But in that silence, Alex felt something shift between them. It wasn't just the words. They were a small thing compared to the weight of everything they had just been through together. It was the look in her eyes, the way she regarded him like she was seeing him for the first time. Talira began, but her voice faltered. She took a step closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. You've made this complicated, Captain. Alex smiled softly, his voice quiet. Good, I was hoping to make it complicated. Her lips twitched into a smile, and for a brief moment it felt like the rest of the galaxy had faded away. You're too much, she muttered, but the words didn't hold their usual bite. She didn't seem angry. In fact, her gaze softened further and she closed the distance between them, standing just a breath away. He could feel the heat of her presence, the magnetic pull between them, and in that moment he knew what he had been denying. He was falling for her. The depth of it surprised him. They had come together through a shared struggle and now they stood on the edge of something more. But it was frightening too. The consequences of their feelings weren't simple, not when their worlds were so different, not when everything was at stake. I didn't expect this, Talira said, her voice a soft whisper. I didn't expect you to be like this. Like what? Alex asked, his heart racing. Human, she replied, her eyes searching his face. You're so unpredictable, you don't hold back. You fight for what you believe in, no matter the odds. She paused, her gaze flickering with a trace of something deeper. And it scares me. The honesty in her words hit Alex like a wave. He stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers, his fingers brushing against her skin. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but I'm not afraid to fight for you, Talira. Her eyes softened, the vulnerability she had tried so hard to hide now on full display. And what if that fight is too dangerous? What if it's more than either of us can handle? I'll handle it, Alex said with conviction. We'll handle it together. For a long moment, Talira simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. You're a fool, Captain Carter. Maybe, he said with a grin, but I'm your fool. There was a beat of silence before she let out a breathy laugh, the sound light and unexpectedly tender. She stepped even closer, her body just inches from his, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch. They were no longer just captain and ambassador, human and alien. They were two people, bound together by shared experiences, by a bond neither could deny. I think I'm starting to understand you, Captain, Talira said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. And I think I might like what I'm seeing. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. You do. She nodded, her lips curling into that same soft smile that always made his chest tighten. Yes, I do, but you're still too stubborn for your own good. Guess I'll have to live with that, he said, his voice low and full of warmth. And then, without thinking, he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that felt both gentle and urgent. The weight of their shared emotions, the challenges they had faced together, all of it surged between them in that one moment. When they finally pulled away, neither of them spoke immediately, both feeling the heat of the kiss still lingering in the air. Maybe, Alex said softly, we should focus on what's next. I don't think this is the end of our adventure. Talira nodded, her eyes bright with something that felt like hope. No, Captain, this is just the beginning. And in that moment, as they stood side by side, the ship now at peace, Alex knew that whatever the future held, it would be worth fighting for. He was no longer just a captain. He was something more. And with Talira by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The aftermath of the battle left the Kalath ship in a strange sort of calm. The crew had completed their immediate repairs, and life aboard the ship was returning to some semblance of normalcy. But for Captain Alex Carter, normal didn't feel normal anymore. Since the battle, everything had changed. The quiet moments he shared with Talira felt like a secret between them, an unspoken connection that neither of them had ever expected. There was something about her that made him feel more alive, more vulnerable, and more determined than ever to face the unknown by her side. Yet as much as they had shared, as much as they had fought together, there was still something hanging in the air, something unspoken. The doors to the observation deck slid open, and Alex stepped into the room, his boots making soft echoes against the polished floor. The stars outside stretched into a beautiful expanse of endless light, painting the room in a soft, ethereal glow. And there she was. Talira stood at the far end of the deck, her back to him, staring out at the stars. Her silhouette was framed by the endless black of space, her form strong yet undeniably graceful. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he took in the sight of her, as if his very soul recognized her presence. She had always been like this, an enigma, something far beyond what his human mind could truly comprehend. Without turning, Talira spoke, her voice soft but clear. "You always come here when you want to think, Captain." Alex smiled, walking toward her. "I guess I'm not the only one who finds the stars comforting." Her lips curled into a small smile, but she didn't turn to face him. "The stars have always been a source of peace for me. They remind me that no matter what happens, the universe is vast. It's beyond us, beyond anything we can control. It's both humbling and freeing." Alex stopped beside her, looking out at the view as well. There was something in the way she spoke that made him feel like she was trying to tell him more than just words. She was trying to say something deeper, something she wasn't ready to say aloud. "You know," Alex said, his voice low, "I've never been the type to look up at the stars and feel small. I always felt like they were a challenge, something I had to conquer, a goal I had to reach." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Maybe that's the human way, always trying to go further, climb higher, be something bigger." Talira turned her head slightly, just enough for her violet eyes to catch his. "And you think that's wrong?" "No," Alex said, his voice soft but firm. "But there's something about the way you look at the stars. It's not about conquering them, it's about understanding them. You don't try to fight the universe, Talira, you accept it." For a long moment, Talira said nothing. Her gaze returned to the stars, her expression unreadable. Alex's heart tightened in his chest. Was she pulling away from him? After everything they'd been through, after all the moments they had shared. Finally, Talira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for any of this to happen, Alex. I never meant for things to get complicated." Alex's heart skipped a beat at the softness of her words. He took a step closer, his hand reaching out to gently rest on her arm. "Talira, I never planned this either, but I don't regret it, not for a second." She closed her eyes, a small sigh escaping her lips. "I've spent so much of my life pushing things away, keeping my emotions under control. It's what we Kalath are trained to do. We're taught to be perfect, to lead with strength, never to show weakness. But you make me want to feel, to be something more than just a diplomat, just an ambassador." Alex turned her gently to face him, his gaze searching hers. "Then don't hide, not from me, not anymore." Talira met his eyes, her expression vulnerable. "It's not easy, Alex, to change everything you've been taught, to let someone in." "I know," he said, his voice soft but steady. "I get it, but you're not alone in this. We're in this together." For the first time, Talira smiled, a smile that reached her eyes and softened the fierce warrior that Alex had come to know. She took a deep breath and placed her hand on his, the warmth of her skin sending a shiver down his spine. "I'm afraid," she admitted quietly. afraid of losing control, afraid of what could happen if I let myself feel too much. Alex stepped closer, his voice earnest. Then let me help you. You don't have to do this alone. Her eyes softened, the walls around her cracking just a little. I don't know how to trust like that, Alex. You make it so easy, but it's not easy for me. Alex gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. I won't rush you. We can take it slow, one step at a time, but whatever happens, we do it together. There was a long pause as Talira looked down at their hands. When she spoke again, her voice was soft, almost hesitant. I think I'm ready. I think I can try. And that was all Alex needed to hear. He gently lifted her chin, his thumb brushing across her cheek in a gesture that felt more intimate than anything they had shared before. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he leaned in closer, the air between them charged with an electric current. Before he could say anything, Talira closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was gentle at first, tentative. But as the seconds passed, it deepened, as if both of them were letting go of the walls they had built around themselves. The kiss was a promise, a silent agreement that they would face whatever came next together. When they finally pulled away, Talira looked up at him with a soft smile. This is new, she said, her voice full of wonder. Yeah, Alex agreed, his smile wide and full of warmth. But I think I'm getting used to it. For a moment they simply stood there, hands entwined, both lost in the quiet, comforting silence of the stars. The universe around them was vast, unyielding, and full of possibilities. But in this moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the quiet connection they had forged, a bond that was stronger than anything they had expected. The future was unknown. There would be challenges, no doubt, and they would have to face them together. But for now, with the stars as their only witnesses, Alex and Talira knew one thing for certain. They were ready. Ready for whatever came next, and they would face it side by side. Whatever comes next, Alex said softly, we'll make it work together. Talira smiled, squeezing his hand tighter. Together, she agreed. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, the promise of the unknown hung in the air, shimmering with possibilities. They didn't know what the future held, but in this moment they knew they were no longer alone. Together, they were ready for anything. The days that followed felt like a dream to Captain Alex Carter. The Kalath ship, the Trellis, now drifted peacefully through the stars. The fierce battle that had nearly torn it apart was now a distant memory, and the crew had shifted back to their usual duties, though a strange sense of calm had settled over them all. But for Alex, the battle was only the beginning. Because now, with Talira by his side, everything had changed. They spent their days working together on the ship, coordinating the final details of the diplomatic agreement between the humans and the Kalath. But it wasn't just about politics anymore. Every look, every moment shared between them felt heavier than before. They had crossed a line from comrades in arms to something deeper, something more vulnerable, and Alex couldn't ignore it any longer. It was the small things that got to him. The way her eyes would linger on him when they passed each other in the hallways. The soft smile she gave him whenever their hands brushed as they worked side by side. The way she would tease him about his human impulsiveness and how he always made her laugh with his dumb jokes. They were simple moments, but to Alex, they meant everything. Yet despite all the tenderness, the quiet bond they were building, there was still one thing that hung in the air between them. Something unsaid, something both of them were afraid to confront. But that was about to change. It was late one evening when Alex found himself on the observation deck again. The stars shimmered outside, the endless void of space stretching into infinity. He leaned against the glass, lost in thought. The universe had never seemed so vast, so unknown. And yet, for the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone, not with Talira by his side. He turned at the sound of footsteps behind him. There she was, Talira, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the low light, her eyes searching his face. She had a way of making even the simplest of moments feel important. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, her voice warm with that familiar teasing lilt. Alex smiled, grateful for her presence. "Just thinking about everything, I guess. The ship, the mission, the future. Us." Talira raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Us? What exactly do you mean by that, Captain?" He chuckled softly, feeling the heat rise in his chest. "I mean, well, you know what I mean. All this time we've been working together, fighting together, and there's this tension between us. Something more than just the mission. I can't stop thinking about it. About you." Talira's expression softened, and for the first time there was no trace of her usual guarded demeanor. "You know, Alex," she said quietly, stepping closer until there was only a breath's distance between them, "I've never been one to give in to feelings, to let myself want something, but with you, it's different." Alex's pulse quickened. His heart pounded in his chest as she reached up to gently touch his cheek. The soft brush of her fingers sent a wave of warmth rushing through him. "Is it?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Talira nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "You make it impossible to ignore, impossible to deny. It's not just about the mission or the battle, it's about us, and I can't pretend I don't feel it, no matter how much I try to hold back." Alex could barely believe what he was hearing. The strong, composed Talira, the ambassador who had been trained to keep her emotions in check, was admitting that she felt the same way. She was opening up to him in a way he never thought possible. His hand gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her smooth skin. "Talira, you don't have to hide from me, not anymore. I'm not going anywhere." For a long moment they stood there, locked in each other's gaze. It was as if the entire universe had disappeared, leaving only the two of them. The tension between them had reached its peak, and Alex knew that there was only one thing left to do. Without another word, he leaned down, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative as if they were both testing the waters. But soon it deepened, a shared heat igniting between them. The kiss was everything, gentle and passionate, full of longing and promise. When they pulled away, neither of them spoke. The silence said it all. Alex rested his forehead against hers, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been waiting for this, Talira, for you, all this time." She smiled, her hands finding their way around his waist as she pulled him closer. "I know," she said softly. "I think I've been waiting for you too in my own way, but I've been afraid of what this could mean." Alex's heart ached as he looked at her. He knew what she meant. This wasn't just about passion or desire. It was about something deeper, something that went beyond their shared moments in the midst of battle. It was about trust, about letting go of the control that both of them had held onto for so long. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently, brushing a strand of her hair away from her face. "Whatever happens, we face it together. We don't have to do this alone." Talira's expression softened and she reached up, her fingers trailing lightly down his jaw. "Together," she repeated, her voice filled with something tender, something vulnerable. "You really mean that, don't you?" "More than anything," Alex said, his voice full of sincerity. For a moment they just stood there in the stillness of the observation deck as the stars shone bright around them. The ship was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Alex felt at peace too. He had found something he hadn't even known he was searching for, a connection that went beyond words. A bond with Talira that was both fierce and fragile, but something that he knew he would fight for, no matter what. Talira took a step back, her hand still in his, and smiled that rare, genuine smile that always made his heart race. "You're right. We don't have to do this alone." "I don't want to do this without you," Alex replied, his eyes full of emotion. "I think," she said, her voice light but full of meaning, "that's the first thing we've ever agreed on completely." Alex chuckled softly, his thumb brushing against her hand. "I'm sure it won't be the last." With that, they walked toward the observation deck's large window, side by side, ready to face whatever the future held. The stars stretched out before them, and for the first time neither of them felt lost. They were ready to take on whatever came next, together. As the ship drifted through the stars, Alex realized that the universe, vast and unpredictable, wasn't so frightening anymore. Not with Talira by his side. And whatever adventures lay ahead, he was ready to face them with her. Because they were no longer just two people from different worlds, they were a team. And that was all that mattered. The stars outside the Kalath ship trellis stretched into the endless night, but for Captain Alex Carter, the vast expanse of space had never felt smaller. In the quiet of the observation deck, with Talira standing beside him, the universe seemed a little less intimidating. It was as if, for the first time, he wasn't just part of it, he was with it. And it was all because of her. Since the night they had shared their kiss, things had shifted between them. There was a softness in their shared moments now, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. They still worked together on the diplomatic mission with the Kalath, their responsibilities as critical as ever, but everything else had changed. Now, it was about more than just the mission. It was about them. As they stood there, looking out at the stars, Alex felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling he couldn't explain but knew was powerful. For so long, he had been driven by duty, by the need to achieve something greater. But now, with Talira by his side, he had something to fight for that was more personal, more real than any mission he had ever faced. "You've been quiet tonight," Talira said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but there was no mistaking the curiosity behind it. "What's on your mind, Captain?" Alex smiled and turned his head toward her, meeting her gaze. The light from the stars caught in her violet eyes, making them shimmer. She had always been beautiful, but now, with this quiet understanding between them, she was more than that. She was everything. "I was just thinking," he began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of his words, "about how much has changed since I met you. I didn't know what to expect when I boarded this ship. I thought it would just be another mission. But meeting you, it's made everything different, in the best way." Talira's gaze softened, and she took a step closer, her hand brushing against his. "You've changed things for me too, Alex. I never expected someone like you to come into my life. I've always had to be in control, cold, distant, focused on the bigger picture. But with you, I've let go of that. You make me feel things I didn't even know I could feel, things I was afraid to feel." Alex's heart raced at her words. She wasn't just admitting something. She was sharing a part of herself he had always known was there, hidden beneath the surface. A vulnerability that, until now, had never been revealed. He reached for her hand, gently lifting it to his chest. "Talira, you don't have to hide from me. Not anymore. I want all of you. Your strength, your fears, your heart, everything." She smiled softly, her thumb grazing the back of his hand. "I think I'm ready for that, to let someone in, to let you in." They stood there in silence for a moment, the gentle hum of the ship around them the only sound. Alex had never been so aware of someone, of how their presence could make the world feel both larger and smaller at once. But as much as he wanted to savor this feeling, he knew they had to face what was next. The peace they had fought for wasn't guaranteed. Their enemies hadn't disappeared, and there were still political tensions to resolve. The Kalath had enemies in every corner of the galaxy. But that was a battle Alex was willing to fight, especially if it meant protecting the connection he had with Talira. "We still have a lot ahead of us, don't we?" Alex said, his voice steady. "The Alliance, the Kalath, the future." Talira nodded, her expression turning serious. "Yes, but I think we'll face it better if we face it together. The Alliance, the battles, they'll come, but what's more important is what we make of it, together." Alex pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. He had been through many battles in his life, faced down enemies and dangers that had made his heart race with fear. But nothing had ever felt as real, as vital, as the journey he was about to take with her. He lowered his head, brushing his lips against her forehead. "Whatever happens, we've got each other." She smiled, a rare, open smile that made Alex's heart flutter. Yes, we do. Days passed, and the Kalath ship Trellis continued its course through the stars. The diplomatic talks were making progress, and the atmosphere aboard the ship had changed. The crew was more unified, more determined. They had seen what could happen when they fought together, and it had given them strength. But for Alex and Talira, the real challenge was finding balance. They weren't just allies in this mission anymore. They were partners, bound together by something far deeper than duty. They spent time together outside of their official duties. They explored the ship, learning about each other's worlds. Alex showed Talira Earth's simple pleasures, things like walking through the ship's garden, where Earth flowers had been planted in microgravity, or watching old Earth films that were strange to her but made her laugh. In return, Talira shared more about the Kalath's culture, their history, and their rituals. She taught him about the stars and how her people used the constellations to tell stories, passing down wisdom across generations. One evening, after a long day of meetings and discussions, they found themselves in the ship's garden, sitting together on a bench surrounded by the soft glow of Earth plants. The stars outside were just beginning to twinkle, their light filtering through the glass walls. "You know," Alex said, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd find myself here, on a Kalath ship, and certainly not falling for someone like you." Talira laughed softly, her head leaning against his shoulder. "And here I thought humans were predictable." He grinned, his hand resting over hers. "Well, I'm not. I guess you'll just have to get used to that." "I think I'm starting to," she said, her voice soft and full of warmth. They sat together in the quiet, the bond between them growing stronger with every shared moment, every soft touch. It wasn't just about the alliance anymore. It wasn't just about the mission. It was about the two of them together, facing whatever the future had in store. "Whatever comes next, we'll handle it," Alex said quietly, his words filled with promise. "Together." Talira nodded, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. "Together." The stars outside seemed brighter than ever before, and for the first time, Alex felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. He wasn't just a soldier or a captain. He was a partner, an equal, and with Talira by his side, there was no challenge they couldn't face. As the Trellis drifted further into the unknown, Alex knew one thing for certain. The journey ahead would be their greatest adventure yet. And whatever battles they would fight, whatever obstacles they would face them together. Because in the end, that was all that truly mattered.